Teenagers of Reddit, have you ever had a teacher so dumb you questioned how they got the job as a teacher? I had an older chemistry teacher in high school, probably about 50-60, that was just about oblivious to everything around him, aside from just being totally disorganized in the order he taught things, so most of his lectures made no sense as we didn't have context as to what came before. Here's just a general list of his escapades. Kids would be lighting up metal tongs on the Bunsen burners and fight each other with them. One kid got a nipple flap in his shirt. That was pretty funny. One kid would dump all the chemicals he got a hold of in a beaker in the far corner of the classroom after each experiment. He was so inept at teaching that once on a test that he never really taught material for, was caught handing out random grades to all the students. Often did homework the same way, as some kids didn't even turn theirs in and would get A's and B's. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff, but that's the brunt of it. Not sure what happened to him, as that was my last class my senior year. My history teacher told a class of future engineers that airplanes were only able to fly because they were built in a cross shape. You can imagine the laughter that ensued when they realized she was not joking. My favorite quote from the first course of Aerodynamics. In this class you will learn how the air reacts against the different forms of wings, hull and general vehicle shapes. We will treat anything between biplanes and jumbo jets. We will however not treat the helicopter. For all intents and purposes that's just witchcraft. Yes, some professors too. Most memorable was my sex ed in Eastern Europe not so long after CCCP fell. According to my teacher, you climax because of temperature, thus rubbing your pee-pee makes you CM. Even as a kids we realized it's bulls. Orgasm is a myth and sex is a sin anyway. Allegedly, I've got good education by world standards. If that is true, I'm afraid to know how low the bar is set. My sex ed teacher said that if we had sex before we turned 18, we would die. Holy frick, I've needed this outlet. I had a teacher for my freshman year of high school. Now I know every student hates a teacher, but this was different. She was a math teacher who accused everybody of cheating. I was in an honors class with my best friend and we were comparing answers on a packet that she graded and passed back. Me and him had similar answers, but different grades. On, for example, question 5, we were both answer A, except he got it right, and I didn't. We asked her why and she just started screaming at us, accusing us of cheating, even though the paper was already passed back. This is only one instance. She took students' papers away and trashed them for no reason time over time, and she seemed to target my friend. My friend had all A's, a strict mother who wouldn't accept anything below a B, and he is in my eyes a genius. Our teacher treated him so crappy that he literally tried to kill himself because of the snowball effect of getting bad grades and his mom treating him badly. Not to mention, she thinks she is a wizard and threatened to get her wand on us. She sat on 2 chairs because she was so large that one wasn't enough. And her students once made a petition to get rid of her. Sorry if I sound like I am rambling. I'm using this thread to rant. Took some entry histories course my first year of college. The first words out of the professor's mouth was, I know this is an entry history course most of you are taking as a requirement for another field, but I'm going to make this course so difficult. Most if not all of you are going to fail or drop out. Yet, I walked out and signed up for a different history course to satisfy the requirement. Got an A. Some professors say this on the first day to scare off lazy students, but don't actually follow through with the threat. I had one professor who said something similar on the first day. The next class he looked around the room, took stock of how many students didn't show up and said, this is a more manageable class size. I am not a teenager and I generally don't hold grudges, but this is a grudge I've held my whole life. I will never forgive my 5th grade math teacher. We weren't allowed to use calculators on our homeworks at the school and I had this absolute dictator of a math teacher. We generally had to show all our work unless it was obvious. On one of the homeworks 99 circumflex 2 had to be calculated and I thought that was sufficiently obvious, 199.99. So I didn't show that part of the problem, I just wrote it down. She said no one could possibly do that in their head and gave me a 0 on the homework. Absolutely wouldn't discuss it or listen to reason. Same teacher gave us a puzzle out of a magazine. A friend and I solved it together. And once you had the answer it was trivial to show you had the right answer. This woman looked at it and said that's wrong. I don't know how it's wrong, but I couldn't solve the puzzle, so there's no way a couple of 5th graders could. Same teacher ended up being my bio teacher. We had to make cell drawings. I'm sure that's really common, but I put an enormous amount of work into mine. It was super detailed and well labeled. She gave me a 0 for not using color, which demonstrated that you didn't care. I hate her. She wasn't dumb, but she never liked to teach. She literally slept during lecture. She only gave tons of homework and didn't even teach how it's done. But when our principal used to come to check, she used to suddenly start acting like she was the best teacher ever so that she doesn't get fired. That way even we couldn't make any complaints. Good, I finished my school. At least 5 times. I wouldn't call them dumb, just not professional enough. Substitutes don't count, I assume, but every English teacher I've had, except for one, didn't speak English properly. I'm in a French province of Canada. I always end up being praised for being bilingual, but like, you studied in this, in university. My 3rd English teacher once asked me to stay after class to read a letter she wrote for a retiring co-worker, in English, to check if there were any mistakes. That honestly made me laugh afterwards. We hardly learn anything in English. Most of the time, it's just French storytelling and talking. Good job. Yeah, a math teacher I have does this thing where if they forget to check homework, or anything, they put a 0 in for it. So then my parents see it, and then I get in trouble for the teacher's stupid mistakes. I also had a teacher that said medication can't help your ADHD. It's just an excuse, and I had to try best not to simultaneously yell and laugh my butt off. Have ADHD. Currently having a smile at that. My history teacher argued with me for about an hour. He was teaching us World War II. He was saying that Japan never took part. English education system in a nutshell, people. Funny hearing from a country who were colonized by Japan. In my freshman year of high school, my chem teacher went on maternity leave, and the long-term sub was nothing short of a dumbass. Not only did he not know half the material he needed to teach, he spent an entire 80-minute class period once lecturing us on why global warming isn't real. I had an English teacher who was absurdly sheltered and dumb. She was in her 60s and I think she had no contact with the outside world. This was a college-level ESL English as a second language class. English is not my first language, but I was already fluent by then. She was teaching us business jargon one day and she said a multiplex was a cinema room with a screen on each wall. Yes, really. And you sat at a table and you could turn around and watch whatever movie you wanted. Predictably, everyone started talking at the same time and saying that was not how a multiplex worked, and she kept denying it. We asked her how would you deal with the different soundtracks, and if you had to pay for 4 tickets, and she said she didn't know. She'd never been to one, but that's how they worked. I guess you could wear headphones? She got really mad and ended up walking out of the class. She complained to the dean and we all got told off for questioning a teacher. Yes, really. I tuned out her voice for the rest of the year and just read books. Side-eyeing the dean hard. Not a teenager, but my college history professor told us all American Indians were vegan because they understood that killing animals was wrong. One of my first days at my new school, our year 5 teacher was reading Treasure Island to us and one of the characters had a saber-cut scar on his face. She said that it was from a saber-toothed tiger. I piped up and said something like, "That's nonsense, saber-toothed tigers are extinct." Her response, "Treasure Island was written a long time ago." I don't even have a joke, just stop letting these people teach our children. Think I got one. She's so old, her cat is a saber-toothed tiger. I got nothing else. My 7th grade social studies teacher, public school, Indiana, asserted that Mahatma Gandhi was a Christian who converted from Islam. I didn't even bother to try and correct her. Crazy crap like this came out of her mouth almost every day and I got sick of trying to address it because the principals didn't care either. She also had a large nativity scene on her desk that took up over a third of it. Welcome to Indiana, where incompetent teaching and religious proselytizing go hand in hand. My 7th grade social studies teacher in Indiana had a mirror at a low point on his desk that we realized he was using to look up skirts. We also gave him an industrial-sized jar of peanut butter that he ate with a spoon over the course of the year. I have endless stories about this man. I had a teacher in needlework. She was gone for literal months. and there was so few teachers in needlework in Sweden, so we had no substitute, and therefore we had no lessons that hour. One lesson she was here and we did a test. Whatever score we got that test was our final grade, and I don't know why she is still teaching to this very day. My science teacher thought Galileo's telescope was a space telescope, and my chemistry teacher was so freaking clumsy. She dropped mercury container and spilled hydrochloric acid in my class. I heard she broke some other crap and experiments went wrong. No one died or seriously injured, but I don't know how she got that job, hold that job, or stayed alive. I got into an argument with a teacher who asked if anyone knew Galileo's first name. Happens all the time where I go to school RN in a third world country because it's a school that doesn't pay teachers very well, meaning we are always short on teachers, meaning we will accept anybody to teach even if they have no idea what they are teaching. So, we had one person who might have been a criminal or something because he changed his nationality and his name and came here to work even though our school doesn't pay him. Now he left, probably on the run. Oh yeah, and don't get me started on a flat earther physics teacher. Flat earther physics teacher. HMMMMMMM. My year 10 physics teacher, 9th grade. Physics was my weakest subject throughout school, so I tended to ask quite a few questions. I would always try working it out by myself first, by using the 2 books we were given, but sometimes had to go ask the teacher BC I just wasn't getting it. She would always tell me to refer back to my book. What does the book say? Hold on, let me look in the book. How did you become a physics teacher if you can't explain anything without a book? It got to the point where I stopped asking her anything BC, she was zero help. My art teacher in elementary, whenever I would draw something, I would work my butt off. Then she would give me crap about it lacking texture, shading, or it wasn't round enough for her. Keep in mind this is from kindergarten to 5th grade. It would get to the point where I was so frustrated that I was crying and she wouldn't do crap. She's acting like she expects us to have college art skills. She was the same with my sister as well. I hope she's not teaching anymore. What a bee she was. Old and cranky too. Sounds like my elementary school art teacher. This bee chewed me out so badly over blending that I went home crying and stopped drawing and sculpting altogether. When I was 19 in university, my biology teacher, who had a PhD, refused to teach evolution because she was a creationist Christian. She was required to have an evolution lecture, so she had another professor come give it, but she sat in the front and if anyone asked a question she would glare at them. I don't know how she got a freaking degree, let alone became a college professor. My biology teacher was a creationist and a PhD. Didn't believe in evolution because how can structures this complex be an accident? Yet she taught the theory so thoroughly. I had huge respect for someone who could put aside their religion for the sake of teaching the scientific consensus. She made me believe it was all true even though she didn't believe it herself. Every history teacher I had did not understand nor had a grasp on what they were teaching. We were just memorizing events. Teacher, in year X the Magna Carta was signed. Student, what was it for? Student, why did they need it? Teacher, I know it's irrelevant to the post, but the Magna Carta was signed in 1215 by King John to make peace between the crown and rebel barons. It was a list of rights granted to the people and was significant in that regard. Yes, my English teacher, she started teaching in our school this year, but she don't even speak the language. When she tries to teach complex grammar she messes up every goddamn time, and I just feel bad for most of my classmates who already have troubles with foreign languages. Not my teacher, but my friend has a long-term sub. Said sub never actually teaches. Instead, she yells at the class and then just does the work. A lot of kids have to go on Google and YouTube for help. Little context. I'm from the Philippines and English isn't the native language but is almost as widely used in the country. In fact, the Philippines is one of the countries who speak the language fluently along with native speakers. But oh god, I had this teacher who taught our English class in grade 10 but was almost always grammatically incorrect and spelled words wrong a lot of times. I don't judge people who have a hard time constructing a sentence in the language because, as I've said, it wasn't the mother tongue, but actually teaching it, that's a whole different level. level. Once, our top student at that time, who was a little more advanced than the rest of us, once contradicted her, but she got mad and got so defensive that she shut him up and made him sit down. We researched the lesson and found out our classmate was right. I was so frustrated that year, and apparently, news flew to the administration and she got transferred the next year. It was just crappy that we had to endure a whole freaking year with her having not a single thing learned. There was this fat butt teacher that told us to run faster during recess. She was over 400 pounds and told us that we were slow. Me and my friends nicknamed her the Tin Can for no reason. She was fired 2 months later. My biology teacher in high school asked me if me and my twin brother were fraternal or identical. I'm a girl. It was a serious question. I've heard that this question is depressingly common. I had this one computer science teacher who had absolutely no idea what he was doing. We had to tell him what to do half the time, as he'd be taking these long roundabout ways of doing very simple stuff. I think that's just most teachers when it comes to computers. I was showing my best mate some things about India once. Since I'm half Indian, my BFF wants to know a little more about it. Then we came to religions and showed him some of them and their symbols. In case you don't know, Hitler adopted the swastika from these symbols. Then one of our teachers comes over and tells us to go away from all that Nazi stuff. And I explained to her that it's just some Indian religions, and then she I've never wanted to speak to her since, and I'm glad that I don't have her anymore. Report her. My year 10 understanding the human body teacher, on the first day of class, he actually admitted that he was a physics teacher. I'm not saying that he was bad at physics, but I don't understand why he was teaching biology. We would sometimes ask him questions about the material, and he would usually say that he doesn't know. Most of the stuff he either got out of a textbook, without explaining it thoroughly, or he would Google it. The class average for the exams was about 55, 60. I had a ESL English teacher who was actually a science teacher. All he had us do were paragraphs about our weekends or keeping a journal and crap like that. Then he just up and disappeared for months with no news on whether he quit or not. Eventually a new teacher came and said the old one basically transferred schools to teach the subject he actually studied in. Years ago in high school, I had this science teacher who was completely useless. He spent every lesson reading from a textbook and having us copy it down. After about half a year he disappeared and we were given a decent sub. Turns out he wasn't even a teacher and had got the job because nobody ever checked his background. He ended up getting arrested, where we finally found out he was a con man. I've seen a comment about this on another post, but this also happened to me. We were in geography and revising for a test we had. Our teacher pointed to England and said, "This is London. The capital of it is England," and I just couldn't hold in my laugh. England is my city. Not a teenager now, but when I was in 8th grade, my science teacher mused, "It makes you wonder how they never bump into stars when they go into space. I'm pretty sure they would die before getting close up with a star." Not as a teenager, but in job school, my politics teacher was a freaking joke. The only thing he did was giving us worksheets which he got from the internet, probably for free, and while we tried to complete them, he was in the back of the class and did crap with his iPad. Most of the time he didn't even know the correct answers to the worksheets. We had one test in this class and it was about recent news. We should just watch the news to study. There was a freaking soccer question. Like, what was the score of the match? Gosh, I got so mad. Thank goodness that we only had this class once every 2 weeks for one semester. I hated that lazy piece of crap. I have a graphic design class. Took it because I was told it was easy. The teacher literally believes the moon landing was fake, thinks the earth is flat, and doesn't even teach. He uploads YouTube Photoshop tutorials to Google Classroom and essentially just says follow the tutorial and turn it in. I'm more concerned with the fact that we're not his only class. 6th grade of a pre-K8. First year they decided that 6th wouldn't be a part of the rotating teachers except science. 7/8 got separate science, math, English and history. She was a kindergarten teacher the year before, and she was the only candidate. Other choices were the principal, a useless administrator who couldn't handle a classroom, or a parent. Would have sucked, but oh well. It turned into practically a daycare. kids brought in stuffed animals, built a pyramid in the back out of mural paper that people would just get into randomly during the day. We watched cartoons at 3. Frick her. I hated her and let her know it. Useless. Stupid frick. I learned nothing that year, and the science teacher that year was the worst teacher the school hired in the 12 years I was there. The most overqualified idiot ever. Mrs. P and Mrs. H. The worst teachers I've ever had. Easily tops the alcoholic Latin teacher who would come in hungover in high school, and the college calc prof who couldn't speak English. What was the Latin and Cal teacher's name? I think we went to the same high school, Mayo. Our class usually liked the religion teacher, however one time he said that he didn't believe in evolution because he doesn't identify with monkeys. Of course that's because trough evolution we became a different species. We didn't evolve from monkeys anyway, we just share a common ancestor. We had a year 12 calculus teacher who added 7 and 5 and got 14. Her eyes went in completely different directions and she gave a kid attention because she failed to provide a chair for him. So he sat on a textbook covering the top of the rubbish bin, and the bin collapsed. I once had a geography teacher who in all honesty did not know the order of seasons. A grown man teaching a group of 16-year-olds. Where do I even begin? When I was 7, teacher, and dogs are, me, omnivore, teacher, no they are carnivore, me, but I saw in TV that they have teeth used to chew vegetables like us and that a little bit of vegetables and fruits are good for them. Teacher, mad as frick, then give him meat and see if IT doesn't eat IT. Me? Yeah, they are omnivore so they will eat it too. She didn't have me the good behavior chocolate that week. When I was 12 or so we had a hellish teacher that talked way too much about religion and torture for someone who doesn't reach the subject. We actually started asking deep religious questions when we weren't in the mood to study cause he would waste the whole class talking about it and we could do whatever quietly. He once got freaking mad like mad when a girl said Happy Easter to him because there is no happiness in Jesus dying. He also called the same student a lesbian for sitting on the lap of her friend. Told her to stop it or people would talk. In my country that amount of skinship is pretty okay. And she was a kid. Had a teacher in college who would just talk about prostitutes every class. No reason. No provocation. Just say something about prostitutes in the middle of the lecture. She was a woman but this is still creepy. Another teacher said we should answer the tests in the most direct way possible. 15 lines maximum. Got my test back with a lockerish grade because it lacks details. The only person who got the full points did a 2-page detailed and redundant essay. He talked about how he wanted it short 4 weeks before the test and literally right before it. I hate this pig. Oh yeah, we had a grade 12 English teacher that had absolutely no clue what she was doing. All she did was talk about her little dogs. The only real assignment we got was to pick a book from the library and write a report on every chapter and hand it in at the end of the semester. And by then end of the semester she had totally forgotten about it. Which was a good thing because nobody did it. Haha. Having been a student and a teacher and a parent, I've concluded 10% of teachers are great, 20% are good, 40% are fair, 20% are bad and 10% are terrible. I would rank myself as fair as I only taught 2 years and didn't get up to the good range. Teachers get little training and the poor students are the ones who suffer. They get experimented on, essentially. I feel bad that my students didn't have a more experienced teacher. I did the best I could but knowing material and teaching it are very different. And most of a teacher's time can be spent in classroom management. I taught at a school where lot of the kids had parents that didn't care about education. Once had a woman, supply teacher, I think, try to tap the touchscreen whiteboard in our classroom for some kind of presentation. This was a while ago. I was like 10, so I'm a bit hazy on the details. Except it wasn't a touchscreen whiteboard at all. It was a projected image on a whiteboard. She was just poking a whiteboard, and we all found it pathetic. Got M. Yes, this was back when I was in elementary school. We had this one teacher that was kinda dumb. One day one of the students asked her, "Have you ever seen a narwhal?" or something around the lines of that, but she processed to say that they are not real. The student said look one up on Google. She did. When she saw the images and held her statement by saying that they aren't real and that they are probably photoshopped. I had a teacher in elementary school that didn't know basic math. I couldn't ask her for help because of that and had to figure it on my own, then teach my teacher math. I never understood how she got the job. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.